Hey guys, welcome to the Whimsical Workshop. In this video, I'm going to run through how you make our terrible trio. So let's get started. Yay! A few years ago, I designed a pattern called the Terrible Trio. These are 3 monsters made out of Minky that we did when we were working with Michael Miller, trying to come up with ideas on how to showcase Minky. So I created 3 monsters. This one here is Trip because he has 3 eyes. This one is Dottie because she has 1 eye, and then hiding back here is Puck because he looks like a hockey player. So these were the 3 original monsters that went into the pattern, and now they kind of hang out here in the office with me, or in the office. They kind of hang out here in the studio with me. And we have a spot on the shelf for each of them so they can stay with us. But in this video, I'm going to show you how to make one of your own. So when you buy our pattern, it's a bigger pattern and it comes with a huge sheet. It's 36 inches. Now I've already cut parts off of it, but I'm going to open it up here so you can see. There it is. This is called the Terrible Trio. I've already cut out my pieces for today. So that was the other one with its horns and feet and hands. And then there was also this part was on here as well. And this is in a box because these are your fusible applique templates. You don't need to cut these out as individual templates. We're going to be tracing them on fusible web. So if you just cut out the whole box and keep it with your pattern, you can make more and more of these monsters. So the beauty of this pattern and these monsters is I've made these 3. But you can use this body with this eye. You can mix up, what the teeth look like. You can change out the arms. But tonight I'm going to take the body of Puck and I'm going to actually do it upside down and create a whole new monster. I'm using part of the eyes from Dottie and the mouth from Trip, and we're going to combine them all into a brand new monster, which if you want to, at the end of the video, leave a comment below and let me know what we should name this guy once we get a good look at what he looks like. So to get started, the first thing you need to do is take your templates and cut out your pieces. If you cut out all of these big pieces, you can just fold them up and put them in your pattern for future use. And we are going to be done with that. So the next thing is we are going to cut our pieces out of our Minky. So what I recommend is you put the Minky right sides together with the shiny flat side up. Go ahead and put your body on the Minky. And then you're going to use a Sharpie marker, which we never can find when we need one. And we're going to trace it onto the Minky. And we're going to just trace it one time. But again, this is a monster pillow, so if it's not 100% accurate, it's not the end of the world. Monsters are not perfect. They're perfectly adorable. All right, so once we get that traced, this we can just put in our pattern and save for another time. And then we are going to cut this out on the drawn line. So we have 2 monster bodies that are mirror image of each other. So this is what we're shooting for. And this is going to be our body for our pillow. So once you've got your body traced and your 2 body pieces traced and cut, then we're going to move on to the other 3D elements of our monster. First, we're going to take our fabric and we're going to lay it right sides together, and I recommend pressing it to make the fabric stick a little better. And then you're going to take your monster horn. I'm using monster number 2, and you're going to trace the horn, which we've done here. And then once you've traced the horn, you're going to go ahead and cut them out on the drawn line. And then you're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance and sew these together and turn them to create your horns. And I'm going to talk about how to stuff the horns and how to make them stand up, but we have our horns ready. Then the next thing we need to do is the arms and legs. And again, take your fabric. We're going to use this really fun polka dot, and you're going to put them right sides together. You're going to use the template to trace 2 arms and 2 legs, and again, you are cutting through the layers to create a mirror image and a paired set. Once you've got those traced, here's the other leg. Once you have them traced, you are going to take them over to the sewing machine, and again, make sure these are right sides together. I have a lot of legs and hands. I could make a 4-legged monster, 5-legged monster. Okay, once you've done that, then you take it over to the machine and you are going to trace that or sew using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, on the horns and on the arms and legs, I like to take my scissors and cut my curves, and I'm cutting up to the threads but not into the threads. So you can see right there where I've cut them. This is going to make it nicer. When you turn it, you're going to get a curved edge. So we are going to make 2 legs and 2 arms. So now we have our legs, our arms, and our horns done. And those are all done the same way. So next up, we need to do our face element. So this is another place where you get to be super creative with our monster pillows. You have all of these elements here. We've got monster 2 mouth, monster 3 mouth, monster 1 eye, monster 1 mouth. You get to pick how you want your monster to look. So what I have done is I picked the mouth from number 1. Now remember, this is reversed, so that's why it goes like that. I picked the mouth from 1. I picked the teeth from 3. I picked the outer eye of 2 and the inner eye of 1. And that's everything. So that's it. So how do we do this part? So first thing you need to do is pick the pieces you want. You're going to need a mouth. You may or may not want teeth. You may or may not want big eyes, little eyes. So pick the pieces you want. You're going to take fusible web. I like to use Heat and Bond Light or Ultra Light. And there is a glue side to this, and there is a paper, a smooth side. You're going to take the smooth side and you're going to trace the shapes you want for your face onto the fusible web. I highly recommend using a ultra fine Sharpie marker because the line of this pen is the same thickness as your scissors that you're going to be cutting it with. And that way you don't have to guess. Do I cut on the other side, outside of the line, or the inside of the line? It's going to be the same as your scissors. So you'd go ahead and you would trace whatever shapes you want onto your fusible web, which is here. And then you're going to roughly cut this out. You do not want to cut it on the drawn line. You want to cut outside the drawn line, because when we iron it on the fabric and cut it, we want our edges to be sealed in glue. And I'm going to go further into that. So you're going to trace your 2 teeth, in this case, your fangs. You're going to roughly cut it out. They're the same color, so I'm keeping them together on the fusible web. You are going to iron it onto, in this case, there is no right or wrong, but if you had a printed fabric, you'd iron it onto the wrong side of your fabric, not the right. And now we can cut it out on the line. And what I meant by the glue is because these 2 layers are ironed together and then I'm cutting on the line, all of it is sealed in the glue that we've already ironed, so you don't have your edges fraying on you. So that is really important if you do any kind of fusible applique. Once we have it all done, then we're going to go ahead and cut them out on the drawn line. Now our pieces are ready to go onto our monster. So let's start assembling. So we are ready to start assembling our monster. Now in my case, I'm going to make the monster with a skinny head and a big wide bottom, where originally with Puck, it went like this. So I just took the body for Puck and I'm turning it around. Now that I know which end is going to be the head, we're ready to start fusing our pieces onto the Minky. Now, Minky is a polyester fabric, so it doesn't really like to be touched with an iron. It will distort the fabric and make it look my doodles. What can I help you with, my dear? She loves her ice. There you go. So when we go to press our pieces onto our Minky, we're going to use an applique pressing sheet. In a lot of my videos, if you've watched, I use the Applique pressing sheet. It's a little bit thicker of a sheet. I used this applique pressing sheet for 20 years. We do sell both of them. This one is thinner and it works much nicer as a pressing cloth versus the thicker Applique sheet. So I am going to use this today. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to remove the paper from the back side of all of our shapes. And I need a pin to do this. And how you do it is you just scratch the back with the pin and it becomes a peel and stick, and it becomes a crack and peel, and you can just pull your paper off. And I'm just gonna go ahead and do that for all the shapes so I don't have to forget, so I don't forget. The other thing I didn't do on this guy is he could have a nose. I mean, you could do that out of a different color and make it look more like a beak or a bird. The possibilities with this guy is endless. You can certainly make these monsters your own. So there is one big eye. And here is another big eye. And then I gave him a skinny but long mouth. Now I can make it a smile, I can make it a frown. You know, this is where you get to play with it. I can make it, you know, kind of going up at an angle, kind of like that. Or we could go this way, make him sad, or his teeth are gonna go like this. So play with it. See how you know, audition different positions on your face. If you're doing all three, you know, play around and see which way you like the eyes or the mouth. You can add a nose. You can certainly create your own shapes for these too. These are Doodles is digging for a toy. Yes, Doodles. All right, so there's that. I like his eyes. I think I want him to be happy though. So I think I'm gonna make his mouth go down a little lower. So we're gonna put the mouth on second, but once I have my eyes where I want them, and I think I do, you're gonna lay the pressing cloth over your Minky and the eyes. You don't wanna you wanna use a hot iron, but you don't wanna be pressing on it very long. So we're gonna just get it pressed down. And you'll see, like, because I use the pressing cloth, you can just smooth the Minky back out. If you touch the iron to the Minky directly, it can melt it. So don't do that, especially if it's like a printed Minky. Oh, it does not like an iron. So, all right, so we've got my eyes on there. And then we've got to put his mouth on. So I'm gonna make him happy. But I kind of liked that. I liked it up like that. And then maybe have one tooth like that. One tooth like that. I feel like he needs a nose. I don't know why, but I think he might. I don't know, what do you guys think? Like that? Like this? I mean, I know that makes him sad, but, or we just go straight. We have one tooth. Maybe we have his teeth sticking out like that. Oh, maybe. Oh, that. I think we might hit on something here. What do you guys think? You like that? I like that. I think that's cuter. Still feel like you might need a nose. That is not, I'm gonna probably just take one of the eye templates and make it the nose. So I will go trace that and cut that. So we're gonna go ahead and iron his little mouth on. She is just making a mess over there with all her dog toys. Now that we've cut out his nose, let's bring her. Now I think it's a he. The nose makes it a boy. So we got the nose. We're just gonna go ahead and position and press this in place. And he's just gonna go over the eyes a little bit. Yeah, that makes it. There's our happy monster. So we're gonna go ahead and press his nose into place. All right, so we have our little Terrible Trio monster pillow front done, and now it's time to finish the edges on the applique. I'm going to link a video below where you'll actually see me on the machine stitching a blanket stitch, so if you really want to see that, you can check that video out. For this video, I'm just going to talk about it and share with you my tips on doing it. One is you want to make sure you're using an open toe foot. This is an open toe. That is an open toe foot. There is no bar, no plastic. It is open. And the reason you want that is so that you can see your edge of your fabric as you stitch this around the edge of the piece. Next is I'm going to match my threads to my piece, which means white on white, black on black, red on red. Blanket stitching on Minky is no different than blanket stitching on anything else. If the Minky was the applique, you would need to worry about the nap of the fabric or the direction it goes in, but because we're doing flat cotton on top of Minky, not a problem. The next thing I want to show you here is how you would do your blanket stitch. So if this is the edge of your shape, let's pretend that's the nose. Okay, blanket stitch goes like this with a bite, this with a bite, this with a bite. So when you're stitching, you want the straight part of the stitch to go along the edge of your applique, and then the bite to go into the applique. And that is how you do a blanket stitch. These are big chunky pieces, really easy to do, but before you start, it's always good, if you haven't done it in a long time, is to practice on a scrap piece before you go onto your finished piece. And I recommend doing hearts and stars because there's lots of corners. I recommend doing hearts and stars because you've got points and curves and ends, and it's a good practice shape to go with. But again, this is beginner, really, really easy. So check out the video below if you need to know how to do the blanket stitch on the machine. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and get this stitched, and then we'll be ready to put our little monster together. Alright, so we have the little face all stitched out, and I love the way the Minky, it pops off the Minky. The Minky kind of acts like a padding behind it, so it gives it a really nice finish. So now we're ready to start assembling. We've got our feet and our arms, and of course our most important things, the horns, and we're ready to stuff these. We're going to use some stuffing, but the other trick I do to get my horns to stand up is I use a pipe cleaner, and I just put it inside the horn, just like that. I just kind of make a loop. I don't make it a tight bend, but enough to kind of fit in there. Now, if you're making this for a really, really little kid, a baby, you probably don't want to use this because there's a wire in here, but if it's for an older child and you don't feel uncomfortable using a pipe cleaner with them, go for it. But this is definitely not something you would put in if you're giving it to a baby. But I'm just a very big kid, so I get pipe cleaners in mine. Then we're just taking some polyfill, and we're spreading the pipe cleaner apart and pushing this in between the two halves. That will help keep that pipe cleaner in place in your horn, and that will help the horn stand up on our little guy. And you'll notice I didn't stuff the bottom half, and I'm not over stuffing these. I'm keeping them pretty, like, probably say 3/4 of filling. Not a lot of filling, because again, we want this to be soft and squishy and not super fat and hard, and we need to keep the bottom part empty because we're going to need to sew over this. So, and I'm just going to leave the pipe cleaner end sticking out for now. So there's one horn and another horn here. And you can use a purple thing to stuff these, or a dowel if you don't want to just use your finger like I'm doing. Basically, I'm too lazy to go get a dowel, but this works just fine. There we go. So there's the second horn, again keeping the bottom flat part flat. That's tomorrow's project, don't worry about that one. So there we go, there is the other horn. And then for the arms and legs, you could do pipe cleaners, but there's no real need to. It's just the horns to get them to stand up. We don't want floppy horns. So we're just going to, again, stuff these about 3/4 of the way full, keeping the bottom part flat because we're going to catch it in the seam. And there's that. He's gonna be a really cute monster. Alright, there's his little legs, his little arms, his horns. Okay, so now what you need to do is you need to grab yourself some Wonder Clips. Wonder Clips work the best with Minky. You can use pins, but again, Minky tends to be a little thicker, so it's a little bit easier to use Wonder Clips. So what we're going to do is we're going to position our arms, and we're going to center them, figure out where we're going to put them. I think I want them down here. And instead of having them out like they're going to be, we need to have them tucked in so they're in between the two layers as we sew our pillow together. So we're going to clip this guy in place. And a little note on Wonder Clips, I've bought them the generic ones and I've bought the Clover ones, which tend to be more expensive. And in this case, I do feel like you get what you pay for. These, I bought some from Amazon and they were really hard to open and close, where these ones have just the right tension. So now what I'm going to do is, you can see here, here's this little hand and it's at the corner of that mouth. So to position this one, I want it in about the same place, and I'm going to use that corner of the mouth as a guide again on the other side. Even though my mouth is slightly crooked, it will still work as a nice little guide. All right, so there are his arms, and we're going to do the same thing for his legs, and I think I want his legs closer together. So between the teeth, and again, flip it up so that it is inside my pillow. Clip this in place, and this in place, and then the same thing over here. Now when we get to the horns, which I'm next, when we get this over to the sewing machine, we're going to tack these in place before we put the back on. You do not want to sew over this metal in the pipe cleaner. So even if you have to stop and skip over it, don't hit it with your sewing needle, because it could break the needle and the needle could go flying. So be forewarned if you use pipe cleaners to not sew over it with your needle. Okay. So there's that one. This guy, he needs 3, so we're gonna make sure it's all nice and flat. The more it's tacked down before you go over, the better it will be when you go to sew, if you don't have to try to fiddle with stuff. There we go. Now, if you are using, my machine has a dual feed setting, so I don't need to use a walking foot, but if you're just using a standard sewing machine, at this point you really do want to be using a walking foot. A walking foot has feed dogs on the foot, and then you have feed dogs in the machine, and it helps get thicker pieces of fabric through your machine without stressing the machine. If you have a machine like mine, which is a Bernina 570, it has a dual feed feature. Make sure you're using the dual feed feature. So I'm going to go over to the machine. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance to tack all 6 of these pieces in place, and then we're going to be ready to put the guy all together. Alright, so now I've got everything anchored, so when I do put him together, that is what he will look like. So he's looking awfully cute. Now we're ready to put our back onto our front, but before we do that, we need to now clip these pipe cleaners short now that we have them tacked in place. Use very old scissors or a wire cutter and clip these. Do not use fabric scissors. This will damage your scissors no matter what pair of scissors you use. So there we go. Those are trimmed. Now we're going to put the back on, right sides together with all the little stuffy things inside, and we're going to leave an opening for turning along this edge. You don't want to leave the opening anywhere near your little feet or horns, because it will make it much, much harder to finish this. So we're going to go ahead and clip this with our Wonder Clips, and I recommend clipping more on Minky than you do on cotton because it does slide. So we're just going to go ahead and get this all clipped together, and then I will be ready to sew it again, leaving a 3 to 3 inch opening, like that much, whatever that is, 3-4 inches right there. Whatever opening you leave, you are going to have to hand sew closed, so you want to leave it big enough to be able to turn it, but small enough that you don't have to sit here and hand sew for 2 hours. Alright, So we have our little monster all clipped and ready to sew. And what I do is I always leave a bigger opening where I want to leave my opening. Now we're going to go over to the sewing machine. We're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around, which will cover the little 1/4 inch we use to tack our feet and our horns in place. So we're going to go ahead and get it sewn, and then I'll bring it back over and we can finish this guy up. Alright, so here we are all sewn around using a 1/2 inch seam. There is my opening. Yes, it is super small because you know what? I do not like to hand sew. And we are going to slowly and carefully pull our monster through that teeny tiny hole. Now the beauty is if your hole is too small and you accidentally enlarge it by popping some stitches, you're going to sew it anyway. So it's not a big deal. So we're going to get our little monster through the opening here. Just go slow. Don't get frustrated. Eventually it's just like that. I popped it and now it's going to go really easy because I've got most of it through the hole. Again, you're trying to get the little padded arms and feet through here. There we go. There it is. Our little monster's coming alive. There we go. All right. There's his little horns and his body, his little jelly bean body here. There we are. Whoops, there's his other leg. Now we are ready to stuff him, and then we need to hand sew this, and we are done. So let me get stuffing. Just a touch more. Alright, so now that we've got our monster stuffed, he's got a little problem right there. He's so cute. Doop-a-doop, doop-a-doop. Alright, so now we need to stitch the opening closed. Now one of the beauties of Minky is that because of the plushiness to it, your hand stitches will just disappear in it. So what I'm doing is I'm folding in the raw edge a 1/2 inch and I'm clipping it because it is under pressure right now. There's a lot of stuffing in here and it doesn't want to be closed. You really want to make sure that raw edge is tucked in. It's sneaky because there's so much bulk to the fabric to get it that way. All right. Now we're all clipped, ready to sew. Got to get our hand sewing tools. In my trusty Yazzie bag, which there is a video coming on how I use my Yazzie bags with a giveaway coming in the next couple weeks. So make sure you stay tuned for that. So yeah, love those bags. Alright, so to stitch the opening closed on this guy, I've got these, we have these on our website. They are lipstick cases full of needles. I love this for my needle carrier because it's cool and small and it fits in every bag. And then we have our Hummingbird Threaders, which I use all the time to thread my needles. And what I do is I kind of roll the needle on my finger till it pops onto the metal beak of the bird. And I do have a whole video on how to use this. Put my thread over the beak. There's a hook that grabs your thread and you just slide the beak out of the needle and the thread comes with it, and there you go, you're threaded. I like it so much better than the traditional standard ones because those little wires always bend on me. And this is steel, so it doesn't bend. It lasts forever. I've had this one in my bag now for a couple years. Alright, next trick is the tailor's knot. Got your needle. You're going to cross the tail of your thread over the needle, so it's a plus sign. Needle is up and down, thread is going side to side. Then thread is in front of the needle, and then I take the tail and I wrap it around the needle, 1, 2, 3, and I slide the thread in between my 2 fingers. Then I pull the needle out, but keep my fingers pinched, and now I have, oops, now I have a tailor's knot right there. Learned that trick from quilting as well. All right, so what I'm going to stitch here is a ladder stitch. And I'm going to put a link below for that video as well. I did a whole video on just how to do a ladder stitch. But it basically, if you look at your piece, okay, and you have, this is one edge and this is the other edge. A ladder stitch is, and you gotta remember there's like the raw edge tucked in here and here. So there's this edge here is a fold of fabric. So you take your needle and you go in here, you travel down a 1/4 inch, you come out, you come over, and you travel down a 1/4 inch, come out and down, and it creates what looks like a ladder. But this will all disappear, you won't see the stitches, and it's a really great way to close stuffed animals or anything you have to hand stitch closed. So I'm going to go ahead and hand sew him closed, and then we will be back. I'm going to hand sew him closed, and then we will be back to wrap this up. Alright, so here is our little monster pillow. He is all done, or she. I haven't decided if it's a boy or a girl. But this is one of the pillows made from our Terrible Trio pillow pattern, which I will link below. It is available at the whimsicalworkshop.com. But because it's called Terrible Trio, there are 3 monsters that we show in the pattern. But now I guess with this guy, we have a quartet. So let's bring in his friends. There is Miss Dottie, because she has one eye. We've got Puck, who looks like a hockey player, so that's why he's called Puck. And then we've got Trip, who has got 3 eyes, so he is Trip. So we now have a quartet of little monsters. I hope you've enjoyed watching me make this pillow. Super fun, super easy. Plenty of time to make one before Halloween, though I have to say they are year-round monsters that I absolutely love having in my studio. And if you have any ideas what we should name this little guy, he's the only one that doesn't have a name, leave it in the comments below. I will link the video below for how to finish the edges and the ladder stitch. And as always, if you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe, and until next time, have a good night.